أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. Can everybody hear me? Verily, all praise is due to Allah. We seek forgiveness from the wickedness of ourselves and the wickedness of our deeds. Whomever Allah has guided, it is with His will. Whomever is misguided, only Allah can guide. And I bear witness that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is His final messenger. In Surah Al-Imran, ayah 102, it is stated, O you who believe, fear Allah as He should be feared, and do not die except as a Muslim. My dear respected brothers and sisters in Islam and elders, I greet you from the greetings of paradise. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today's khutbah is going to be on marijuana in our youth. I will be giving you lots of statistical facts on how important of a situation it truly is. Legal marijuana was a $10.4 billion industry. Not million, $10.4 billion industry in the United States in 2018. With 250,000 jobs just in the handling and packaging of the plants. And this was actually said by Mr. Bo Whitney, who is a vice president and senior economist at New Frontier Data, which is a leading cannabis market research and data analysis firm. The stigma once attached to marijuana, aka cannabis, I will be using this interchangeably. Marijuana and cannabis, they're the same thing. So the stigma once attached to marijuana, aka cannabis, has become a thing of the past, as we see marijuana is more accessible and more acceptable in our society today. Not only that, 20, 30 years ago, marijuana was something that was looked down upon. Nobody would speak about it. But nowadays, it is becoming very common. So today's khutbah is going to be on recreational marijuana. This is a marijuana for people, pretty much for young kids that want to get high and have a good time and so forth. And this lecture is also geared for parents to get a little bit more knowledge on what I'm going to speak about, inshallah. So recreational marijuana, again, has become almost as common as tobacco use. And this is particularly true amongst adolescents and young adults. Marijuana is the most common illicit drug for teenagers. In one study in 2015, the National Survey on Drug Use and Health estimated an increase to 22.2 million users in the United States. Some of the later studies that was actually done by the CDC, the Center of Disease Control, that number has actually increased to 37.6 million. And some actually estimate that to be up to 41.9 million or so. And this is as of last year. So what is marijuana? What does marijuana consist of? It actually has 421 components, and it has 60 pharmacological active cannabinoids. And these are the ones that we hear on TV mostly. They talk about CBN, CBD, THC. And each of these has its own psychoactive effect on the mind. So people use marijuana in different forms. And we need to know this in order to have a better understanding. This is pretty much for the parents. For example, your kid comes into the car after you're picking him up from school and says, Dad, today my friends brought a blunt to the school. So inshallah, I'm going to break down some of the most common forms that marijuana is used for. So the most common form that marijuana is used, what they call is a joint, where they take marijuana and they roll it up into a special paper and they smoke it. Other forms nowadays are where they smoke it into a pipe. It's a plastic cylindrical form, and they use water vapors, and this is referred to as what they call a bong. Also nowadays on the news and everywhere else we see, they have edibles, they also have teas. The edibles are candy bars, they have cereals, chips, cookies, gummy bears, honeys, they have jelly, they have popsicles, they have syrups, they have shots. Other methods also include what they call a blunt, where they take a cigar and they remove half of the cigar out and then they replace it back with marijuana, and that is called a blunt. So lastly, The most two common forms that I'm having a lot of problems with in the emergency room is what they call vaping and dabbing. Vaping is where they use these electronic units, these Juul cigarettes and so forth, and then they use marijuana that comes in liquid form, and then they smoke it. Actually inhale it, it's not smoked, of course. Now, the last one is where there's a lot of problems, what they call dabbing. What they do on this form is where they take the marijuana, the THC out of the marijuana, and they take the resin, the oils out of it, and then they make it into a liquid form, and then again, kids use these electronic units, these e-cigarettes, Juuls, and then they vaporize it. And I've known some kids tell me after one or two hit, I'm done. And it literally hurts a lot of people. Not only that, last year, a lot of marijuana clinics will claim that there's been no deaths reported from marijuana. Last year in the United States, there were 28 deaths that were reported. 3 of them so far that were reported in here in California. Also, the CDC also reported last year that there were 1,479 lung injuries in the United States in the last 6 months. In another study, marijuana is being actually used by 192 million people worldwide. This study was actually done in 2016. And some of them estimate this to be almost up to 234 million. That's approximately 3.9 to 4.8% of the world's population. And the average age that people use is between the ages of 15 to 64 years old. And this is actually a 16% increase compared to 2006. And the majority of places that use marijuana are mostly in the West and Central Africa, Northern America, and we're at 41.5 million users. In another study, marijuana was initiated by 2.6 million individuals in 2016. About 46% of those are between the ages of 12 to 17 years old. Then in 2017, within the same study, 1.2 million youth tried marijuana for the first time. Now the next number should kind of give us a chilling effect. If you break that down on a daily basis throughout this country, 3,300 kids have tried marijuana on that day. And in fact, the same kids that were between the ages of 12 to 17 years old, about 600,000 of those kids, they said they would have no problem getting marijuana anytime they wanted to. In another study, in the National Institute of Drug Abuse Annual Monitoring and the Future survey reports that marijuana has remained stable over the past few years among 8th graders, 10th graders, and 12th graders. 71% of those high school seniors, the 12th graders, they say there's nothing wrong with smoking marijuana on a daily basis. So as we know, marijuana damages the prefrontal cortex of the brain, this portion right up front. And this is the part of the brain that deals with insight, judgment, self-awareness, and other things. And the damage is more significant the younger the person is that begins to use marijuana. And this study was done almost up to the age of 25. And this study was done by Dr. Phyllis Boniface, who's a neuropsychiatrist. And in her study, she found that there was actually a decrease of IQ up to 8 points in regular users of marijuana in her research. And she actually found a more significant decrease of IQ were found in people who were younger than that age when they first started to use it. And she defined regular use as almost once per week, and 6% of high school students use it on a daily basis. Unfortunately, 1 become addicted, and 30% go on to use other drugs. And they say that marijuana is actually becoming a gateway to other drugs. And now kids are trying LSD, heroin, methamphetamines, and many other drugs. The perception is that marijuana is a harmful pleasure. Evidence and research actually show that there's actually a lot of adverse side effects that are related to this. And this especially for the recreational user. And there's substantial evidence that chronic marijuana use, especially during adolescence, is associated with later development of schizophrenia. The mechanism responsible for this association still remains unclear, but there's actually a lot of active studies that are ongoing right now to try to figure this out. Some experts believe that marijuana is a causal factor for developing schizophrenia. And adolescence is a period of critical neurodevelopment. This is where a lot of kids develop their brains. And it is hypothesized that marijuana, the THC in one of the cannabinoids, as I spoke about earlier, actually interferes with the development process and maturing of the neurons in the frontal cortex of the brain, creating a dysfunction. In my last study, there's lots of studies, but I'm just trying to give a few studies to you guys. This study had 6,534 individuals. This study was actually done in northern Finland in 1986. And they evaluated kids between the ages of 15 to 16 years old. And then again, they evaluated the same people at the age of 30. And they actually found an increase of psychosis for those who used marijuana at least 5 times by the time they were 15 to 16 years old compared to those who never used marijuana. Allah Azza wa Jal in Surah Al-Ma'idah, ayah 90 and 91, He says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu, innama al-khamru wal-maysiru wal-ansabu wal-azlamu rijsun min amal al-shaytan fajtanabuhu la'allakum tuflihun. Allah Azza wa Jal here is telling us, O you who believe, intoxicants and gambling, stones and arrows are an abomination of Satan's handiwork. Avoid that you may prosper. So Allah Azza wa Jalla is directly telling us that these intoxicants and other things are appalling, and these are hateful acts of Satan, and He has commanded us to abstain from them. And then in the next ayah, Allah Azza wa Jalla says, إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ الشَّيْطَانُ أَن يُوقِيَ بَيْنَكُمَ الْعَدَاوَةَ وَالْبَغْضَاءَ فِي الْخَمْرِ وَالْمَيْسِرِ وَيُصِدَّكُمْ عَنْ ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ وَعَنِ الصَّلَاةِ فَهَلْ أَنْتُمْ مُنْتَهُونَ. So Satan's plan is to sow hatred and enmity amongst you with intoxicants and gambling, and to hamper you from prayer and remembrance of Allah. Will you not give up? Also, our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that every intoxicant is khamr and every khamr is haram. Include everything that causes intoxication, and it makes no difference whether the intoxicant is either eaten, drunk, or whether it is a solid or a liquid. أقول قول هذا وأستغفر الله لكم. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulullah. So why talk about drugs in the masjid? Being in the medical field, I have witnessed this firsthand, and is becoming actually more prevalent not only in the non-Muslim communities, but in the Muslim communities as well. This is unfortunate. When I got my first case, this was last year, that's why I kind of got this khutbah started, was a young 15 to 16-year-old Muslim boy was brought in by his parents, and they said he was not acting right and so forth, and he's been aggressive, and can we find out if he's taking anything or so forth. The parents were first generation, of course, kid was born here and so forth. So I said, well, maybe this is just a coincidence, peer pressure, bad friends. We tested the kid, and he definitely had marijuana in his system. Then a few weeks later, from another high school, I got another kid. And I said, SubhanAllah, same age, same complaints. Family were worried what's going on with our child, what's happening. And I've started to feel really bad for the parents. And I said, let's test and see what else we got here. So we tested, and SubhanAllah, he had marijuana in his system. We always give referrals, and so far, alhamdulillah, I have not seen the kid back. The third patient was, SubhanAllah, was a young female. She was a hijabi. She came in, and she was complaining of nausea, vomiting, and she had come in with her parents. I did not suspect any drugs or anything. For some reason, we have an automatic system where I clicked, and it hit urine drug screen. So I said, okay, I didn't really think about it until later on. I came back to check her results. Next thing you know, she had marijuana in her system. SubhanAllah, and I had to go back and talk to the parents. I had to talk to the patient. Luckily, she was over 18. So she said, can we discuss this privately? And I said, sure. And we discussed it. She was remorseful, swore never to do it again. And subhanAllah, I have not seen her. My fourth patient, unfortunately, he was a young man, about 24 years of age, and he used to come in from time to time for other things, but this time he came in, he was found in the park. He was pretty much half naked, and we found out that he had marijuana and other drugs, unfortunately. We called his family and said, hey, look, your brother's here, can you come pick him up? They said, we don't want nothing to do with him. Send him to the shelter. I said, subhanAllah. I said, do you know what happens in these shelters? God forbid, if your brother goes there, he may not make it out there alive. So luckily she came and picked him up and took him back home. My last one, there's lots of stories. Unfortunately, these are the things we think this doesn't happen to our communities, but it actually is happening to a lot of us. My last patient, I got a call from up north, a young man about 18 to 19 years old. He was going to school, college, and everything. He did actually have some back problems, but apparently his doctors were not helping. One of his friends said, hey, go to these medical marijuana clinics, they'll help you with whatever. So this poor young man got his MRI, CAT scan, x-rays, whatever else, took a whole chart. They said, the doctor said, just what's the problem? But in 5 minutes, he already had a medical marijuana card and wherever he wanted to go and get it. So he comes home, next thing you know, to speed up the story, because of the time issue, 4 to 5 months passes by, he wastes almost about $1,000. The way this was figured out is parents, dad started to notice that he was taking a lot of money out. So unfortunately, he lost his job, got kicked out of college, and I've been in contact with him, and alhamdulillah, he's doing a lot better. So the reason I'm telling you all this is, what I'm trying to tell you is that drugs do not discriminate if you're Afghan, if you're from another country, if you're Muslim, non-Muslim, hijabi, long beard, short beard. It does not matter. It does not discriminate. Once you start to use drugs, it's really difficult to get out of these. So we need to have open discussion with our children on what goes on with their schools and friends. And as we know, marijuana is becoming more prevalent in our society. More laws and so forth are passing through. I don't know if you guys know this, but within this masjid, there's about 2 to 3 medical marijuana clinics not too far from here. Actually, this is pretty good. I was at another masjid. They had about 10 medical marijuana clinics last week. So I actually decided to call these marijuana clinics, and I said, how do I go about getting marijuana? And the reason I'm telling you this, so we're aware, especially for the parents, it said that if you're between the ages of 18 and 21, you need to go to a medical marijuana clinic. And I said, what if I'm over the age of 21? They said, you don't need anything, you just come in, you choose what you want, whatever you can afford, you go on from there. But between the ages of 18 to 21, they need to go to a medical marijuana clinic, they get evaluated, and then they get a medical marijuana card. So also, just one more thing is that over the last decade or so, for marijuana content has become so potent and has become so strong that it's very, very difficult to deal with in the emergency rooms nowadays. So how do we go about talking to our kids? And here are some tips that I have chosen. Inshallah, this will be helpful for all of us. What they say is to plan to have many short talks with your kids. That's why in my first khutbah I broke down what a bong is, what a blunt is. They say that it's best to choose informal times to have conversations with your children, such as when you're driving them to the car, driving them to the school or so forth. Just ask a question, say, hey, any of your friends using a blunt, do you know what a bong is? They'll kind of go, wow, Dad knows about this, maybe I can open up to him. And continue to have this conversation as they get older. Don't make it a one-time thing. Well, I've spoken about marijuana to my kids, we're done. It's a checkoff. No, it's not. Continue to have these conversations with your child as they get older. Believe me, everybody says, it's not going to happen to my child. It happens. And there's a lot of unfortunate consequences that comes along with it. So clearly state, also in your household, clearly state what you expect. It's haram, it's not allowed in my house. You have to, reiterate this to the kids. And majority of us that have come from back home, try talking to your kids in a different manner nowadays. You have to. Back home, for example, when my dad used to look at me with his eyes, I knew 2 things. I did something bad, and a beating is coming my way. But nowadays, you look at your child, and they're like, well, Dad, what's wrong? I've had this on my own experience. Dad, why are you looking like that? Is somebody behind me? It's a total different generation. And if you shun your child the first time, they may not open up to you. Don't just say, oh, it's haram, we're not going to have this conversation. Then you may just have closed that door to your child. And create family rules, such as expectations, who they can hang around with, who they cannot hang around with, and get to know your kids' friends. Let them know about your morals, let them know about your ideals. Tell them, be proud, you're a Muslim. My wife is better at this. She makes contact with all my kids' friends. You know, they exchange numbers if they want to go somewhere, they're with somebody. Always good to have a contact number or so forth. So in conclusion, my dear respected brothers and sisters, marijuana can lead to long-term consequences. Teens rarely think that they will end up with problems related to marijuana. So it is important to begin talking about the risks with your child early and to continue to have these discussions as time goes on. Talking with your child about marijuana may actually delay the first onset of marijuana, and you can actually save your child's brain. And if your child is already using marijuana, try, and if you suspect it, try asking open-ended questions, curious questions to your child. Again, don't be harsh, don't be mean, like, oh no, we're not going to have this discussion. Have like, hey, what's going on, what's happening? Talk to me, open up to them. And if this has gone too far, and if you suspect your child is already using or so forth, try to talk to a qualified mental health professional. Before I conclude my dua, I would like to thank the African Community Islamic Center to allow me to give this khutbah, especially Zabiullah Nisari, for allowing me to spread awareness on this matter. I will make dua now, inshallah. Ya Allah, protect our children and keep them on the straight path. Ya Allah, grant us good of this world. Sorry. Ya Allah, grant us good of this world and the world and the hereafter, and protect us from the torment of the fire. Ya Allah, do not place a burden on us like the ones you have placed on those before us. Ya Allah, do not burden us with what we cannot bear. Pardon us, forgive us, and have mercy on us. You are our only guardian, so grant us victory over the disbelieving people. Ya Allah, do not let our hearts deviate after you have guided us. Grant us your mercy. You are indeed the givers of all bounties. Aqim as-salat.